also think it's really important for the people who already have voices to give amplification to people who are newer to starting those, places and communities for like underrepresented people. Yeah, you can get into it and start it, but also like the people who are already here like should be offering, collaborations up and trying to bring those people into the conversation as well. Yes.
Nice.
That's really good. Cheers. To a great 2024 and hopefully a good 2025 too.
Cheers. All right, we're doing it live.
Yep, here we are.
So we've got a fun episode ahead, Emily.
Oh, yeah. Very unexpected. We planned this 2 days ago, so.
Super long in advance, so that was cool. We're going to do a bit of a looking back, looking forward, what's working, what is this podcast, who is Emily, how does this all operate, and where do we think we're going? We're live here in Boulder, Colorado. You live in Boulder, I live in Boulder, runners live in Boulder, this podcast lives in Boulder.
Yeah.
This agenda was brainstormed due to my efforts with AI. We used, I believe, Gemini? Yep. Gemini.
Make sure you get the brand or like the type of AI it is.
Yeah. I had a little brainstorming session with
not affiliated.
our bot overlords who will one day own us all. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But yeah, we figured we'd try something different for this one and let's do it.
Yeah. So this is supposed to be like a little bit of a retrospective, some looking forward, some of like, this is kind of how we operate the business of For the Long Run. And I think it's going to be fun.
And we also acknowledge that there are a lot of athletes and creators in the audience. So if we can help provide some guidance or thoughts or ideas or whatnot, that's a bonus. And also not really a bonus because we're kind of intending for that to happen.
That's the purpose of this exact situation.
Okay, so Emily, you have not been on this podcast yet, but you've listened to many of the episodes.
Yes.
And you are responsible for... Who is Emily?
Oh, no. The storied question. I was thinking about this on the way over and I was like, I wonder how I'm going to answer that. Who is Emily? First and foremost, I'm a silly goose. I am a real big silly goose. I wore my silly goose sweatshirt.
The microphone is blocking it, unfortunately. There it is.
Get the shot. And I am the co-founder of Wild Poppy Creative Consulting, which is a podcasting agency that helps creators make a bigger impact. And that might look like production. That might look like making more money from their brand partners or their other monetization stuff. Or it might look like growth tactics and marketing. So it's a lot of different things. I'm a trail runner, normal runner, a rock climber, kind of a skier, and a dog mom. So those are like a lot of the things in my life.
And we've been working together since January of 2023.
No, January of 2022.
January of 2022.
So we're at 3-year anniversary.
Wow,
Very cute.
Look at that. Emily pitched working together 3 times before I said yes, which lesson number 1 is tenacity.
Follow up, everyone.
Follow up. And then follow up. And not right now doesn't mean no.
Yeah. And I also sent you video messages and was just like, hey, I think we should connect. There was no like real pitch. So that's also a lesson of what not to do is like maybe have an intention behind your pitch.
That was the era when like sending video pitches were a big thing. I remember like we had a phase of doing that at Inside Tracker too. And it was right around then.
Yeah. I like doing that because I think it adds a personal touch. But I know a lot of people getting them are like, I don't want to have to like watch something. I just want to like read it and then decide what I'm going to do about it. So I think we're beyond the video pitching now.
I think so too. Okay, we even prepared for this. Those who have been on this podcast know that I generally shoot from the hip and we have 3 pages of notes to get through here today.
Yeah.
Okay, so reflect on 2024. Discuss successes, challenges, and lessons learned from the previous year's partnerships and events. I promise I won't read.
Yeah, please don't do that again. I hated that. Okay, so Jon, what do you think are the top like high points for you from 2024 when it comes to For the Long Run as an umbrella?
I mean, just continuing to put out content on a weekly basis for 6 years is awesome. And learning from all these guests has been ultimately what and why I keep doing it. A friend of mine commented maybe sometime last year, and she was like, basically, it's clear that you do this for yourself and not in a selfish way. Like if I wanted to, shoot for a long run to the top of the charts, we would do things quite differently.
Yeah.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, the podcast is a curiosity for me of like, how do I connect with really interesting people, learn from them, and share those learnings with those of you. We're breaking the fourth wall over here. Third wall?
Fourth wall. Yeah. Fourth wall. There's 4 walls in a room usually. You're breaking one of them.
Right. Yeah.
So consistency.
Consistency, the ability to work with a brand like Puma for the long run, literally, like we're talking about the 3rd year of working together with them, and the depth at which we're able to have an impact for a brand like that. We've helped them. We're going to talk more about this, but we've worked with them getting into running retailers. We've connected them with industry professionals. I'm hoping I can get a few friends hired over there. And we've done a handful of events with them here in Boulder and nationwide. And to lead 500-person group runs in San Francisco and Boston, like, it's a pretty high note there.
It's a large group of people. Yeah. And I also think it's cool that a brand like that is huge, like overall, not just in the running category, is really committed to like being embedded in the running community. So that feels like a high point from my perspective of like, oh, they really care about like bringing people together and like creating this cool community around running.
Totally. We're still missing the F1 connection there though, which we
do need to get like, is it Lewis who is sponsored?
I think it's Lewis Hamilton.
Okay. So shout out to Lewis if you're listening to this.
Lewis, if you're listening.
I love you, first of all.
We gotta DM to collab.
Yeah. Okay. So consistency, like working with brand partners in a way that feels meaningful and valuable. And then are there any other like big high points for you?
Yeah. I just like get a bunch of notes from listeners and people are just like, I love this, or you helped me pick a big goal, or I didn't feel so alone because of the story I heard from James Nance, or like insert guest here. His was particularly noteworthy when it comes to people reaching out. Yeah, it's cliche to say, but it's just like, I got into running through a group called November Project, and the 2 guys that started November Project called the feeling of like receiving that feedback payday. So like that's payday.
Yeah.
I love it.
Do you have like a folder where you keep all these wins and the things that people say, like as your payday folder?
No, I should.
Okay. Tip for everyone. Keep a wins folder.
Keep a wins folder. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to challenges. Like, what do you think were the biggest challenges for you or for the team and the overall umbrella for 2024?
So YouTube is like a thorn in my side. It's like, what do we call it? Like the white whale or the
shiny object?
The shiny object.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out, is it a shiny object or is it a white whale? Meaning, is it something that's a distraction or is it something that can unlock another level?
Yeah.
And so we're in this like constant evolution, continued experimentation phase where we're doing all these things differently and trying to understand how video plays into it. There are 3 mics looking at us right now. We might even post this whole thing on YouTube.
Oh my gosh.
Let alone
what could happen?
Yeah, so don't pick your nose or anything. We'll definitely zoom in and have Dylan zoom in on that. So trying to figure out like, is this a sustainable growth tactic or is it something that is a distraction? And I am someone who is easily influenced by shiny objects. For anyone who knows me like decently well, like you'll be like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, the YouTube thing is quite frustrating, but I do feel like over the last couple of months we've made some like steady progress over there, and I do feel like this new sense of hope with it that I haven't felt in a long time. So I'm hoping that in 2025 we can get to a level where it feels like, okay, we're like chunking away at what our goals are here.
I think one of the problems is like, this isn't a very clickbaity podcast. And, and there's not a lot of like, oh, damn, they said that. Like,
what hot
like
take?
Race preview. We don't do race previews. We don't do race recaps. Like the stuff that people are searching, like the most searchable stuff is like when Molly Seidel is on the podcast and
she crushes our YouTube for us.
Videos get, 6,000 views just because of her name. And so we'll definitely continue to experiment there.
Yeah, but I think like for the listener, I think it would be good to understand like, what is your long-term goal and vision for the long run?
Well, I just want to go back and say, if you're not yet following on YouTube, go follow on YouTube. It's For the LR Pod as the handle, or just search For the Long Run podcast. There are about 800 people subscribed. I would love to see 1,000 by
end of March.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the long-term vision for the podcast? I don't really have one. I knew you were surprised to see this.
On the outline, I was like, I can't wait to hear.
So I have a full-time job.
Yeah.
I spend a few hours a week on this podcast, but like for the most part, it's being executed by a team of contractors. And we'll talk about that later in the discussion here. But I really just like the way it is. I like learning from people. I like spending a couple hours a week on it. And I like building relationships with brands and helping brands do fun stuff in the space. And I really like the math problem, 1 + 1 = 3. And so every relationship I have related to the podcast, I try and make 1 + 1 = 3, where like, how do we all win? Is it a win for the brand? Is it a win for the podcast? And is it a win for the audience? And so the vision for the podcast is find as many win-win-win scenarios as possible, because ultimately, like, I'm doing this for me and I'm doing this for the listener as like a 1A. I would do this. I would have these conversations anyways. I've just decided to put a microphone in front of them. And candidly, some of the runs I've been on lately, I was like, damn, I wish this were recorded, because a lot of people probably would have enjoyed this.
There's some crafty content ways we can get that recorded.
Mic'd up. Yeah. So anyway, long-term goal is just continue to learn and grow and add value to as many people as possible. But if it's one person that benefits, or if it's 10,000 people, like, great. Yeah.
And then I think under that, like, if I've listened to you over the last 3 years in any way, I think it's also like, oh, we'll see right now. It's also like, how can we bring this into the real world more? Like, how can these stories and the way that we're sharing content, like, have this ripple effect in a way that's like gonna benefit and kind of lift all boats type of thing? What is that? High tide?
Rising tides lift all
boats. Or boats, ships, whatever,
boats.
Flotation devices. So I think
PFCs.
like that is the long-term vision too, is just like, yes, like we are so psyched about digital channels. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit, but also like, how can we bring this into the real world and like really make sure that these stories are having that ripple effect in community.
Yeah. And to like, I was on a run the other day and I was 13 miles into 20 and a woman ran by.
Brag.
A woman ran by and was like, I love your podcast. And like that stuff, like those little micro interactions are so fun. And she messaged me, she's like, hey, that was me. Sorry for being awkward or whatever. And I was like, no, like I had 7 miles left in a 20 miler. Like that was a great boost. And then all of the events that we do, you know, at the Boston Marathon and San Francisco Marathon and Boulderthon, meeting people who have this parasocial relationship where put out 50 hours of content a year. Like that's in the ears more than I'm talking to some of my friends. And so like the ability to meet people and hear about them and have it go both ways has been super cool.
Yeah, there's this really weird, interesting fact that I learned at a podcast conference this year, that people feel more connected to you when they hear you versus watching you. Like they feel more emotionally.
Then.
Yeah, actually, we're done with YouTube. No, but like
shut down these cameras. Sorry, Dylan.
That's why
just kidding. You're great, Dylan.
We love you, Dylan. Please never leave. That's why like the podcast game is so cool, because it's such a way to build trust with people, because you feel like these people are your friends when you're listening to them. And there's like actual science that says that through your earlobe, which is really wild.
Science rules.
Science. Okay. 2025 goals overall. Let's talk about running. This is a running podcast after all. So like, what's your running vibe for 25?
It's funny you say that, because some of the reviews are like, this used to be a running podcast.
And now, I don't know.
Now it's a life podcast that is at the intersection of running. By the way, we always appreciate people wwho leave reviews.
Yes, especially 5-star reviews.
Yes, we exclusively appreciate that.
5-star appreciation only.
And we have a segment, Review of the Week, which has been super fun, and people have been participating in it. So thank you for that. What are the goals? More running.
Yes.
We're calling it Return to Ultra. I think either you or Angie coined that term.
Angie coined it.
Angie coined that. So we have a little Return to Ultra video montage. It's not a montage, video series going, where occasionally I'll get retrospective following a good run or a bad run. And I'll talk to my phone as I'm walking down the street.
Yep.
And some of that gibberish is interesting, I think. So we post it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then, I'm doing a 50K in a couple of weeks, which will probably be, a week after this airs.
Yeah.
And then Broken Arrow 26K, and then Grand Traverse 40 miler, which you have signed up for as well. Condolences and congratulations. Emily's Return to Ultra as well.
Yeah, that's actually my year as well for Return to Ultra. Let's go. Hell yeah, brother.
So Yeah, a lot more running. 2024 was a down year. I ran, 1,600 miles, and normally I run 2,300, 2,400, something like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big gap.
So it's a big gap.
Got a lot of injuries.
Injuries, COVID ×2.
Travel.
COVID repeats, and a lot of travel. And
you were doing COVID repeats.
I was doing COVID repeats.
A new type of workout.
Yeah, with a float flu interval.
We love that.
That was awful. The COVID experience wasn't that bad, but the flu experience was horrible.
Yeah.
It was peri-influenza. Anyway, yeah. So from a running perspective, consistency, as I've said for the last few years of living in Colorado, my goal in the summer is to be fit enough where I can say yes to any adventure that's between 2 and 6 hours long, the same for that coming weekend.
Yeah.
And I really like being in that space where I can run between 6 and 30 miles.
Just a very big range.
The drop of a hat, and maybe shuffling around that week's workout or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're in this place where what a privilege it is to be so close to such epic terrain.
I know.
So might as well take advantage of it. More events, want to connect with people in person, Boulderthon stuff, group runs here in Boulder, again, San Francisco Marathon, Boston Marathon, watch this space, as they say. TRE, which will be in San Antonio this year. A little sad that we're not returning to Austin for
the barbecue,
tacos, and Terry Black's
saying hell yeah, brother,
and
so many times.
Hell yeah, brother. Shout out to David Lamb.
Yeah.
We're gonna redo the website.
Yes. Exciting.
So I go on a lot of runs with Jason Fitzgerald, who is also a Wild Poppy client, and in the most recent jaunt up Green Mountain, I found myself in a bit of a, workshopping session. And he was telling me all about his brand and his business. And so he was talking about how website traffic has powered his business. And whether it's with shoe reviews or articles about how to do XYZ, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to have a greater impact there, and then drive more people to the podcast, drive more people to brand partners, and drive more people to events that we're doing, and ultimately provide more value all around, which enables us, again, rising tide lifts all ships. So if we're able to expand the traffic, able to expand the impact, it's just good all around. And then continuing on the video content and YouTube, maybe nail it once and for all. But jokes aside on the YouTube stuff, I'm working with Dylan Delaney, and we have been for a bit. And he was a referral from Sally McRae,
I think, yeah.
And anyone who's watched Sally's content knows that Sally's content's
really
fucking
good.
Fire.
Fire, brother.
Fire. And so Dylan has been making it really easy to work with. And fun fact, my dad is now working with Dylan.
Oh my gosh, incredible.
My dad hosts a podcast on enterprise sales, and it's called Thoughts on Selling. And he's in sales enablement and does a lot of sales coaching for enterprise salespeople. And now he's doing video with Dylan.
Oh my gosh, you were cut from the same cloth also. That is so not surprising that is your dad.
Yep.
Okay, that's awesome. So let's talk about general predictions for 2025 overall. I love how we're not even through the first section of this. We have so many pages.
I think we're going to go to the moon.
I know.
Right?
I think we're going to people are like, what is happening here? But okay, predictions for 2025. Let's talk about that. What do you think is going to happen in this space? Again, watch this space. What's going to happen?
I think the Bruins are going to win the Stanley Cup.
Definitely not.
Oh, we're talking about the podcast.
Not, sorry. Yeah, watch not that
pop
space.
Culture.
This
Got
space.
It.
Yeah.
A recent episode of Second Nature, which is my favorite podcast.
I don't think there's been a day where you haven't talked about Second Nature in the last 4 months.
I am Dylan and Aaron's hype man.
Yes.
And whether they need it or not,
I think they need it, but you're doing a great job.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Second Nature is a podcast about the business of the outdoor industry with a focus on trail and ultra, but running in general. They have a lot of industry veterans on the podcast, brand builders, people. I was on there talking about the difference between brand marketing and performance marketing. It's fascinating. Anyway, they did a 2025 preview, and they talked about a couple of things that we're doing, which is
nailed it.
Which is it was really nice. Creators working with athletes, creators working with retail, athletes working with retail having a bigger impact in the community, and sort of the flywheel effect of as those three groups work together more, it benefits the brand and it benefits the running community at large. And so the example that we've been doing with Puma and Fleet Feet, or Boulder Running Company, has been driving people to Fleet Feet for group runs, course previews with Boulderthon, or kickoffs with Boulderthon, and panel discussions and group runs and taco trucks and Dunkin' Donuts ice cream, Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Wow.
What? That would be incredible. I want that.
Dunkin' Donuts ice cream.
I bet you Ben & Jerry's has something like that in
Dunkin'
the works.
Donuts. Shut everything down and let's just
but the iced
focus
coffee,
on that.
Obviously.
Yeah. And then you make a float.
A frappe?
A frap.
Yeah, but like Dunkin'.
Dunkin'
We can cut that as well. Okay.
We're both from Boston, or have lived in Boston, so affinity for Dunkin'.
Yeah.
We thought we were going to have a Dunkin' sponsorship in April of 2023, but unfortunately
I'm still not saying that. Just because someone says no doesn't mean they're saying no.
Right.
Yeah.
If they say no, it means no.
Yeah, that does mean no, just to be clear.
Not a business, though.
Anyways, this is like, I love that people are getting a glimpse into like our weekly conversations, because it's like, okay, let's get back to this situation.
So back to predictions. I think we're going to see, and this isn't like mind-blowing predictions here because a lot of people are saying it, but I think we're going to see a focus on performance again, not performance marketing, a focus on performance in athletics. And I think that we're getting back to, like, again, look at how Puma grew. They focused on community and elite athletes.
Yep.
And so then they go and have the experience at the Olympic trials where 1 and 3 were wearing Puma shoes. And it was, everyone was like, I was getting texts like, oh, Puma is legit, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been telling you that for a couple of years now.
Alfie would like to weigh in on his predictions, but we are not open to hearing a K9's predictions about the running community, unfortunately.
I'm open to it.
More running. More running. I also think that we're going to see more niche content and niche communities and niche creators. I hesitate to call women a niche, but like there's so much content that I don't want to say excludes women, but doesn't put women first. There's so many discussions that are happening that are not including the opinions of women. Yeah. And spoiler alert, women make up, I don't know, something like half of the population.
Yeah, so, half of our podcast audience too.
Half of this room.
Yeah, half of this room. Like there's just always half. Yeah, I think that's necessary. Just going to TRE, I'm like,
totally. Yeah. Hell yes, sister.
Hell yes, sister.
And then Troy with Mid-Packer Podcast, which is a free trail podcast. Pioneers, which is a streetwear inspired running brand out of Boston that is very popular within the Black community and Black runners.
Yeah. And
they did a crowdfunding round that was massively subscribed. We both participated. Investors? God. Investors, possibly us. Yeah. I think we're going to continue to see success for brands like that, for podcasts like that, for creators like that, where it's not like 35-year-old white males leading the conversation, which is ironic as someone who will be that later this year.
August 15th. Put it on your calendars.
Nailed it. But seriously, I do think that there's a ton of room for more voices, different voices in the space, because I can't remember who I was. Oh, I was talking with Zoe and Kylie earlier today. I made a comment like, oh, everybody has a podcast. We're going to have to like turn down the speed of this episode.
I know.
I made a comment about the number of people who have a podcast. And Zoe said something along the lines of, I don't think it's a problem. Like, we need more voices out there. We need more people sharing their opinions and well-informed opinions. And people have plenty of choices of what they can tune into. And so, again, rising tide lifts all ships. The more options that are out there, the more it forces all of the options to either be better or kind of get left behind.
Yeah. I think that is so important. I also think it's really important for the people who already have voices to give amplification to people who are newer to starting those, places and communities for like underrepresented people. So I think like it's, you can get into it and start it, but also like the people who are already here like should be offering collaborations up and trying to bring those people into the conversation as well. So I think that should happen. Can I offer up another prediction?
Sure.
Well, I think that last year was the first year in which I felt like I didn't have to explain the value of a podcast to brands entirely. Like I felt like we were finally in a place where it was like, okay, they at least know what a podcast is and they know how to like work with one potentially. They might be a little bit misinformed about the pricing of what that looks like. But then at TRE this year, I felt like every brand was like, oh yeah, we're like totally into podcasts this year. Like coming up, that's a big focus of ours. So I think we're also going to see kind of a saturation from a brand perspective. Like I think a lot of brands are going to come in that haven't been in the space yet. And there's going to be a lot of like lessons learned and things that we're going to take away from that. And my hope is that podcasters and creators don't necessarily like undervalue themselves with that influx of brands actually investing, because again, rising tide, like we can't be undervaluing ourselves if we all want to make money as creators and make that work.
Yeah, totally. And there's the problem of the floor that one person sets is the floor that we all have to deal with. So there's a challenge with the lack of proper value that's placed on this medium. By the way, I need to also call out that it's funny that we're talking about the seriousness of podcasting as a marketing asset. I saw social media referred to on LinkedIn today by somebody looking to hire a full-time person to manage social media, in quotes. I was like,
what does that mean? It's like a secret code.
Is this like 2011, 2012?
Yeah.
Like, social media is like very much anyway, I digress.
I'm managing social media.
One more comment on the niche piece. My friend Kevin runs a podcast called Distance to Empty, and it's for multi-day events, which I also like to call ultras. And he's like cornered the market on that audience, and he's got a top podcast for people who run for multi-days, and it's not really running.
What is that, like 200s and above?
Yeah, it's like power sleeping and power hiking and
like the Barclays and
Barclays? No, like 200 and 250 mile races and 401ks and these
401ks. Investors?
401k. Do you know how many miles a 401k is?
Hold on.
249.
That's too many miles, I think.
Anyway, I need Fidelity to sponsor a 401k ultra race. Let's see. Some other predictions before we go back into what we were just talking about that I believe I missed. I think big brands will compete for attention. I think Nike and Puma will make bigger efforts than ever before. And it's going to be good for everyone involved, except for small brands. Yeah. Creators are going to try new collaborations and new ways of creating content. Yeah. By the time this podcast airs, we'll know if TikTok was banned. And I've been seeing people going to another competitor app, but it's also a Chinese app, so that will be banned pretty quickly as well. Yeah, that whole space is going to be like completely unknown. So I think like that is going to move us to creating more audiences with our owned channels and not having to rely on like these big platforms all the time. Well, that's the thing, right? Like if you are not paying for the product, you are the product. Yeah. And so if you don't own the channel, it's at the mercy of Meta changing policies or, not liking who's running Twitter and having a massive exodus from whatever app it is. We saw it with Threads. We thought that Threads was the savior of Twitter. And now Zuckerberg has... actually... Just kidding. And I was like, it's like the meme of the grandpa in The Simpsons who walks into a bar, puts his hat on the thing and walks right back out. And it's like, are we going to keep doing this every time we disagree with? Or you can own the medium like email, which had its moment, went away, and it will be the forever most valuable channel because you own the medium. Yeah. And you can export it and bring it elsewhere. Yeah, totally. And I think this like even further drives home the idea about like relationships are everything, because even if these big platforms go away, like the relationships that you have with other people in the space that are other creators or whatever are going to be more important than like your TikTok or your Instagram.
to create revenue opportunities, but also just to like keep creating in general.
Or just have fun with people.
Yeah.
To quote another or to reference another Second Nature podcast.
God. They need to sponsor this episode.
I texted you about this one as I was running through the trails of Lincoln, Massachusetts. They said something along the lines of 1,000 loyal fans are worth more than 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
And so it's like the value and the importance of connection. And it's like the saying, like trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. And so it takes forever to build trust, and you lose it immediately if you make a mistake or do something, egregious.
Yeah.
And so my goal, like I've been posting about my runs every day for 10 years. I really don't know why I do it. And then I get messages from people that are like, oh, this motivates me to go out and try things. Or like, that's for me the value of that trust. Like I want to motivate people to, and this gets into the next piece, who is the target audience? I want to communicate and be in the same room as people who want to be better and learn about more sustainable ways to achieve progress and not achieve perfection, not achieve success, quote unquote. It's about learning how to continue to be better on an ongoing basis and apply those principles in running, in relationships, in work, in family, whatever the medium is. But like those are the rooms and those are the people that I want to connect with. And this podcast gives me a pretty awesome excuse to have this conversation, at least on a weekly basis, with people I think are really excellent at doing so.
Yeah. And I think this is a good opportunity to just like, we have the target audience, but we also have like the audience, right? And like this has been such a consistent effort for you to build this show and this platform, but it would have not happened at all without these awesome people that are like showing up week in and week out to listen to these conversations, leave 5-star reviews. Thank you. And like subscribe to the things and just engage with everything that's like part of the umbrella. So big shout out to the audience. You guys are the real ones.
Now Emily's breaking the fourth wall.
Hey. Okay, shall we talk about our favorite topic ever? Is it our favorite topic?
Running shoes?
Oh my God. I'm leaving.
Sunglasses?
Okay. All right. So for brand partnerships, so we wanted to talk about brand partnerships because personally, I get a lot of questions about this. I'm sure you do. I know you do as well. And so we wanted to kind of like, again, break the fourth wall of like, why do we work with certain partners? Like, what are our parameters we're working with partners? Why do we see success with those partners? And why do they keep renewing? But also, like, how are we evaluating them too? Like, it's a back and forth relationship. So first and foremost, yeah, those are so many questions. Can you answer all of them in a row? No, but first and foremost, like, why do you think that For the Long Run has seen success with brand partnerships? And you, beyond just me, being part of the team.
The renewal bonus that I implemented for you.
Shit. It's very motivating. Money is so motivating. It is.
Why do I think we see strong renewals?
Or brands want to work with you and the brand For the Long Run?
So I think I have a unique position, a unique perspective, being on the brand side, but also being a creator and really understanding how to approach a conversation with the brand, right? Like there are so many people out there who go to a brand and say, quite literally, like, look, I'm awesome. Here are all the things that I can do. I'm worth XYZ.
Yeah.
The reason that we are able to, one of the reasons that I think we're able to see this success is because we go to brands and say, what are your goals? How can we help you achieve that? And sometimes we know what their goals are and we go to them with a pitch to help them achieve what we know their goals are.
Yeah.
Like if the goal is to grow in running, well, that takes influencers, ambassadors, it takes repetition, it takes trust, it takes all these things that we can help them deliver. And so, like, for example, to go back to Puma again, when we first engaged with them in the winter of 2023, the goal was re-enter running in a big way. And the first thing you have to establish is trust. They're a brand that was successful in the 80s. And they're going to be successful again. Let's try the shoes. Step one. Let's use the product. Let's love the product. Let's find some other early adopters who like the product and then sort of snowball from there. And so with a brand like that, we looked at making it really easy to create content that builds trust. We looked at ways to connect with the community in the places that mattered most, which at the time was Boston and Boulder. And I happened to have roots in both places. So that was a bit serendipitous. But then other brands, like we've worked with Scratch. And with Scratch, it's really easy to work with them because the team is great and the product is great and they're located right here. And what they were interested in doing was communicating how their products fit into a fueling plan.
Yeah.
Not you can only work with Scratch.
Yeah.
It's like Joy, who is their, or Colette, who's their prior dietitian, her job was to work with customers to help them figure out the fuel that works for them.
Yeah.
Scratch played a part in that, but she was able to recommend things like Precision and Bonk Breaker, like all these other things that make it possible. And so it was bi-directional. Like we were working with brands who we work with brands who are excellent at what they do. And we don't work with brands who don't have a great product or who we don't like working with or the people or like, and I used to phrase this as I have a full-time job. I don't need the brand partnerships. Well, I have a full-time job and I need the brand partnerships because I have a full-time job and I can't do all of the deliverables because I need to pay the team to execute on these things.
Yeah.
And so this whole operation is propped up by 5 or 6 people who, like, I'm just talking to people. I'm just the yapping head
on the podcast. That is not true at all, Jon. I hate when you say that.
Okay, so it may not be true, but there are a handful of people that execute everything that happens after I have those conversations. And that requires the partnerships with brands that enable the compensation to be provided for all the people that, again, make this all possible.
Yeah. And just to like, for the audience, I don't know if we've ever explicitly stated this, maybe in like an ad read here and there, but like we don't work with any brands that you don't actually use. So
Right.
the first step with any brand that we're going to potentially work with is that you need to use the product and actually like it.
Bought a car.
You freaking bought a car, man. No, but like there have been some very traditional podcast advertisers, let's say, that you've heard on many other podcasts, and it didn't work for your body in particular. Like
it's actually in my fridge now. I am now using.
No. We're building trust here, Jon. No, but like,
only because everyone around me has been sick for the last month. So it was in my closet.
You can probably guess what it is.
Anyway,
but
Athletic Greens.
Anyways, but it wasn't working for you from like a whatever, your stomach like wasn't
skin
doing
rashes
well.
from,
Yeah. So it wasn't working for you. But they had money to throw, but it wouldn't be like an authentic situation. So I just want to like, for the audience, I want people to understand that when we go into these conversations, that's the first step is like, we need to know that the product is good and that Jon can authentically recommend it. So that's number one. And then number two is like, do we feel like this is going to bring value to the audience? Like there's sometimes products that maybe aren't as like straightforward, like solar panels. Like that's not as straightforward as like Scratch or Puma, but it's a belief system that you have to like do your best to reduce your, impact on the world. And it's like just a smart financial decision. And so people in our audience should hear about that. So anyways, just wanted to give some parameters to like how we think about the initial.
Yeah, I get like between 2 and 5 pitches every week. And it's like mostly, it's half stuff I've never heard of and half stuff that I don't use or wouldn't want to use or wouldn't want to recommend using. And then every so often there's something that's awesome that turns up, but it's like maybe once a month. But like that's how brands have to do marketing. They have to do outreach to people to promote their products. We do some outreach to brands as well. I enjoy doing that. I have a lot of friends who work at brands, so it's usually not cold outreach. But for us, it's about coming up with creative ways to partner with brands. So like Fuel Goods, for example, we've talked about it. They've been a sponsor. They're a marketplace for sports nutrition. And so not only do we promote, go to fuelgoods.com and use code FTLR10 for 10% off. But we created a sample box of the sports nutrition products that I use on a regular basis. And I came to that from the realization, like I've done partnerships with individual sports nutrition brands. Those are products that work for me. I've tried most things at this point. Here's an aggregate of stuff that I like with brands that I like. you should try it and figure out what works for you, and then go buy those products at Fuel Goods.
Yeah.
Again, use code FTLR10 for 10% off. And so it's an opportunity to not just work with one specific brand, but to have a storyline of like, hey, you should be fueling, and you're likely not fueling enough. And there are plenty of options. If stomach distress has been a problem for you, here's a way to buy 10 different products while only outlaying $3 to $5 per product instead of 30 to 50.
Yeah.
And so here we're talking about a brand that has paid us to partner with them in a like reflection podcast that seems organic, because it is organic.
Yeah.
And so we look for stuff like that as a way to have these genuine engagements. Another one is we worked at the local Volkswagen dealer, Emmick, their family-owned dealership, and we were doing these 5Ks 2 years ago now. And so they gave us a car to use to drop up. We were doing not a looped route, an out.
Yeah.
So you still had to run back, but the 5K was in one direction, and they put a car at the finish so that we could pick it up and drive back.
Yeah.
And so people who didn't want to run back, we had a 70-year-old who was out there racing 5Ks. She didn't want to run back.
Yeah, fair enough.
I didn't want to run back. So I got in the car and I drove it back. And then we had a bunch of brand swag from Cherubundi and a couple other brands. And it was just like a very seamless integration of like something that's tangibly useful in that moment.
Yeah.
And it was a talking point. People are like, why is there plastic all over? Is this a new car? It's like, yeah, this is like mile 7 of this car's life.
You're not going to be believe the prices over there. It's incredible.
Yeah. $99 a month? Are you kidding me?
I can't believe you're just talking to yourself in the front seat. Okay, cool. So because we wanted to do this also as sort of like a sharing of, how we approach things, and if someone's listening and they're a creator and they want to reach out to brands and have these conversations, like what are some of the key questions? I know the answer to this, obviously, but what are some of the key questions that we ask brands when we're talking to them to help us understand like how we should frame a proposal?
So first of all, it helps to know where the budget is coming from. Is it coming from a performance marketing person, or is it coming from a brand marketing person? Performance marketing is when you're paying for some action, clicks, emails, purchases. Mm-hmm. Brand marketing is storytelling. It's a bit more esoteric.
Harder to measure.
It's harder to measure. It's more fun. I like working.
It's better.
But it's less rigid. Mm-hmm. And brand marketing supports performance marketing, and performance marketing basically harvests brand marketing. Yeah. And so if a brand has done lots of brand marketing, it's more simple to convert and show value on the performance marketing side.
Yeah.
So we like to know that. We also like to know what do they consider success? What are they looking for? Brands can work with creators, podcasts, athletes, whatever, for a variety of different reasons. But ultimately, you're looking to solve for one of 3 or 2 of 3, and hopefully not 3 of 3 pieces of the funnel: awareness, consideration, purchase, or conversion. Sometimes brands will say, I want all of it. And that's a recipe for failure. Brands can sometimes want both, but it's hard to get all 3 at the same time unless the content is like quite different and used in different ways and places. So we can ask a brand and they can say, we're really just interested in awareness. And so if the focus is on awareness, we might not even share a discount code. We're going to just talk about the brand and build the association and build the trust.
Yeah.
If the brand is focused on consideration, we're going to talk about maybe the features and benefits, or how you use it, or like addressing commonly asked questions or friction points prior to purchase. If a brand is like spending tons of money on performance marketing and all they care about is conversion, then we're just going to sling discount codes, but it's not as fun.
Yeah.
So again, going back to a brand like Puma is doing a fantastic job of the awareness. That was their first piece, starting in 2022, 2023, signing Molly, and then building trust. So filling that consideration bucket. The conversion piece is more for them done at retail.
Yeah.
And so driving people into retail, which is something that we do, but the transaction for a product like that is more often than not going to occur in person, or our goal can be to help that happen in person. If you look back to the Volkswagen dealer, nobody was buying a car because we were promoting. Actually, that happened with solar. Somebody called in after listening to a podcast and spent $30,000.
Yeah.
But for the most part, with a considered purchase like solar or an electric vehicle, our goal was to address the hurdles or the obstacles or
common questions.
Bring awareness about the tax credits, for example. And that was why I wanted to partner with those brands, because I was furious that nobody was communicating how awesome the tax breaks were and how affordable these two things really were.
You want a deal. You're like, I love a good deal.
I love a good deal. But I was not, like, nobody was going to freedomsolar.com /FTLR and transacting right there. Like, they would speak to somebody else who would help them on that path to purchase. But our role was awareness and consideration there. We did a really good job with that in particular. We drove $350,000 of sales. That's
pretty sick. That's pretty sick, bro.
So
wait, so getting back to like how we talk to brands. So there's a first piece, which is figuring out if they're interested in brand or performance marketing or a combination of the two. And some good questions there are like, what are your goals? How will you measure this? And if they're really just focused on sales, I'm not totally, at least in my perspective, I'm not super interested in working with them if all they care about is conversions.
Right.
Like, they need to have, in my opinion, a combo of brand and the conversions. So we're figuring out that. We're figuring out the success metrics. And then another question that we ask is something along the lines of, when people are deciding between you and the competing brand, like, what is the biggest obstacle that you have to overcome? Because then in our messaging to them, we can sort of say, like, this is how we're going to overcome that common thing. And I think those are like the main things that help drive us into like, okay, so based on that, we kind of know what can help you in those instances.
Totally. And then the one other thing that's useful in enterprise sales or any type of sales is understanding what gets your customer promoted. And
their goals.
If you know what makes them look good and you can help facilitate that, that's a home run.
Yeah. Okay, last thing I'll say that you should definitely be talking to a brand about if you're trying to have a partnership is you should ask them about budgets and or timelines. Obviously, you need to know, like, what is a budget range if you're going to be putting together some sort of proposal. And you can, ask that on the call once you've shown how awesome you are.
Right. And then the other piece is, for us, everything is custom. Like, we hear the brand and what they say, and then you put together a proposal, and I usually just sign off and say, this is fantastic. Great work, Emily. And versus having a rate card, which I don't know any entity that sells off the shelf anything. Everything is custom.
Or can be custom. You could have something that's like, here's generally like the buckets that people sit in.
Start somewhere.
Yeah, but you could say, it's totally customizable. And another tip I would just give to folks is if they're trying to like reach out to brands and they immediately get send me your media kit. I always try to push back on that of like, no, like, let's talk first. I don't really want to just send you numbers without any context of who I am and how I run things. So now we're just doing, this is a TED Talk now, but
for more on the brand versus performance marketing, please refer to episode
Second Nature. Third time we're getting referenced. Okay. Okay. So we talked a lot about measuring success with the brand, like what they deem as success, but I think we should also just talk about how we deem success with the brand. Like, it is a two-way street as far as like a good relationship goes. And we think about all of our relationships as partnerships, not as sponsorships. So I think that's a big distinction. And if I'm thinking about like a relationship or a partnership with a brand, I'm like, are they responsive? Do they like to collaborate? Do they pay on time? Like, that's a really big one. Are there any other things that you're like, these are the ways in which we're measuring our relationship with the brand?
I really like referring other people to brands. And so like the receptiveness of, if we're early in working with a brand in their mind, like, can we help bring more good people to them?
Yeah.
And so I guess that goes into the collaboration piece, but no, that really covers it.
Cool. Anything else from the brand partnership side? Because I feel like we really nailed it.
No, I just want to call out the brands that we have been working with, and any of the brands that you see repeatedly, like we're working with them because not only are the products good, but the people at the brands are good as well, or great in some cases.
Yeah, like they've actually become friends of ours. You know, it's a really nice situation when that can happen. Shout
out to Phil of Boulderthon.
Yeah, Phil of Boulderthon is one of my favorite people, I think. Yeah. Phil Dumonte. I did it. I finally nailed it.
And Alexa, his wife.
Yeah. Yes. There's power couple there. But yeah, so if you can also like create that deeper relationship with them, it's really rewarding. So, okay, other ways of monetizing. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I think we listed probably not on one of the items here. Another way to monetize is Patreon or premium content or crowdfunding or things like that. So you can either go the advertising route, you can go Patreon or subscribers. Some people do both. I think that's hard. But one of the things that we're kicking around is the thought of some sort of Patreon where it's $10 a month and you get, so it's $120 a year and you get, I don't know, $60 of value. So it's not really like a charity. I've talked with Jason about this. He's like, I don't want to do Patreon because I'm not a charity. It's a business.
Yeah, but they're paying you to give them something. It's a transaction basically.
But yeah.
So it's just supporting like what you're already creating essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't feel for us it's necessary. It would be nice as a way, like I've thought about doing it as a way to like crowdfund additional support that can be reinvested back into the running community, like making some commitment of like 50% or 75% of everything that comes from $10 a month times 100 maybe would go into like sponsoring other podcasts or sponsoring races or scholarships or something like that. But again, like I have a full-time job. I have to think about how I spend my time, and that's not one of the ways I've chosen to spend my time because it doesn't excite me enough to find the time to do it and deprioritize other things that would need to be deprioritized in order to make time for that.
Yeah, it's a shiny object, I think, right now, but it's a shiny object with like a 10% of a white whale.
Yeah.
It's a combo one. Yeah. But we'll see. I think it makes sense for audiences to be able to support creators directly, and that's an awesome format. I'm so glad that exists. But I want to make sure that if we're doing that, the audience gets like a ton of value or like feels like they're part of the crew, you know? So it would be intentional the way that we do that.
I think that we actually have that available through Spotify for podcasters. If somebody is like truly wanting to do that.
Yeah, you can support on there. It's kind of like a buy me a coffee type of situation.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on to events and get to some of the other stuff that we want to talk about, I want to just understand from you and for our audience, like, can you give us a picture of like, where does the money go that you get from brand partners?
Fidelity. That's why I've been pitching them.
No.
I'm just kidding. It actually goes into Mercury, which is another SaaS tool.
Not sponsored as well.
Mercury, for people who have a small business, Mercury, this is not sponsored. Mercury is a great, very tech-enabled platform built by people in tech. That was redundant, but Jesus.
It's a tech platform built by people.
Mercury is a fantastic. Anyway, not the point of the comment. A lot of it goes to the people that produce this podcast. So that was a sizable amount of money in 2024. And I'm not ashamed to say that like I am trying to put myself in a strong financial position so that I can find freedom, like find financial freedom at some point. And I think that there are not enough people saying that like it's okay to like,
I'm with you, brother.
Want to make money so that you can reduce stress.
Do more.
Adventure. Some of it gets invested back into the running community. Like quite literally, I made an angel investment into a property called Brooksy this year. Brooksy is the event operator of the Rebel Race series, as well as Portland, Mesa, and some other awesome marathons, particularly in Arizona. And they have this awesome technology that is really enhancing the way that people are tracked on race day. So race timing is an industry that hasn't evolved in 30 plus years. It's expensive, and Brooksy has this technology called Laurel, which is about 90% cheaper and enables...
His name is Laurel.
Laurel.
That's my middle name.
Like the wreath. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. You know that about me?
I knew that, yeah.
Oh, you have a 1099 for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Laurel is about 90% cheaper.
Yeah.
Working with, hopefully, races like New York Roadrunners, New York City Marathon, so that you can get timing splits every mile, for example, or even more potentially, so that, let's say you're spectating and your friend is coming up the road. You'll know. Like, I've literally missed Kate while spectating the Boston Marathon because the timing was not up to date. So if there's a way to have better consistency and more splits, like we can follow our friends and our loved ones and whatnot, and reducing cost along the way. So yeah, it was cool to participate in something like that. And then being able to sit on the board of a property like that and see how things work on that side of things and dip my toes into that kind of thing. But to be able to have the ability to do that has been awesome. And some of that comes from the dollars that come in through the podcast. So again, quite literally reinvesting it back into the running community to enable stuff like this, or with Pioneers and supporting the fundraising that Sid did was super cool.
Okay, cool. So it goes into actually producing all the content. It goes into
all that
financial. you said that, and paying, me and the rest of our team. It goes into investing in the community, and it goes into investing in self, which I think are 3 pretty good buckets. So good to know. That's good transparency.
The Alfie Fund.
The Alfie Fund is part of the investing in self, because when you invest in your dog, you invest in yourself.
Exactly.
So this year we are going to be doing a lot of different types of events. So that looks like what? What are we going to be doing in 2025 with events?
We're going to be doing live podcast recordings. We're aiming to do some listener meetups, group runs, maybe workshops and virtual. We didn't talk about those. Oh, wait,
Gemini wrote this.
Gemini wrote those ones.
Okay.
That's a good gotcha right there. We should leave that in.
Yeah,
let's leave that in.
I'm a little annoyed about Gemini right now. I feel like Claude wouldn't do this to me, but it's fine. Okay, so this year,
okay, to reaffirm, live podcast recordings and listener meetups. I'm not sure we'll do virtual conferences or workshops.
I don't think we'll be doing that. But yeah, like group runs, we love. I just went to my first group run in
let's talk
November.
about that. How awesome was that?
It was so good. I got so stoked, and I was always so nervous to go because I was like, oh, I'm going to be the slowest person there. But then I was so motivated by everyone around me, and no one's going like breakneck speed anyways. So it's just like fun vibes. And I got to chat with Phil, shout out again. And I got to, pass Dakota, and she's an Olympian. So like,
just having an off day.
Catch up, But then I got to chat with her after for a while. And obviously she's been on the podcast. So like I know her and everything. But it was just like such good vibes that Puma put on, and obviously you as well. But I was really psyched, and I came back and was like, I'm going to join all the group runs. Have not gone to a group run yet since, but...
We'll put that in your performance review.
Oh my God.
Which we don't do. We don't have a performance review.
Maybe we should.
I don't have time for that.
Okay.
Performance review. We're doing great.
So we're going to do more group runs, panels, maybe some creative events that we can't really talk about yet with Boston Marathon and some athletes there potentially. So more to come, but we really just want to integrate all of our brand partners into events that we do so that you guys can get stuff, you can try out new gear, and also like they feel the love. They feel like they're getting in people's hands and can be part of that too. So
yeah, we did an event at Fleet Feet that had like 6 different brand partners. I'm thinking about the one that we did with Wazelle and Kara at the beginning of last year, where it was like, I hope I don't miss anyone, Tifosi, Chirabundi, Wazelle, 2Before, Scratch.
Puma,
Boulderthon.
Yeah, all to say, we just want to emphasize, like, we want to be in the community as much as possible and be amongst the people, as they say. And there's, like I was saying before earlier today, whenever that was 17 hours ago when we were talking, I was like, it's important for us to take it out of these digital channels and get it into real life. Yeah. From a content perspective, you're going to see a lot of returning to ultra content. We have some content ideas up our sleeves, but again, we can't really talk about some of them just yet. But just know we're going to be sharing more on the ultra journey for Jon, and also you, Jon. We're going to be sharing more for you. And and then also more video content that's like slightly different from what we've been sharing thus far. So that's to come, but very vague at the moment. Okay, listener engagement. We want to just keep engaging deeper with listeners. So how are we going to do that?
Continue on social media. It's fun to chat with people who listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
And hear from people. We get a lot of notes in the For the Long Run podcast handle inbox, which is cool. The email newsletter goes out. We have a monthly where I ramble about running a little bit, and which people seem to like for some reason.
Weird.
And brand partner discounts, and we have weekly episode notifications. And sometimes people reply back, and we have like really good conversations about
from the weekly newsletters.
Yeah.
I wish you told me that. I would really write them.
From the monthly. From the monthly.
Okay, from the monthly. I'm like, what? I write them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then listener feedback. I hesitate to take any single piece of feedback as the end all be all. So we do a survey.
Yeah.
And so by having hundreds of people telling us qualitative and quantitative feedback, we're able to make some changes. There are things that I do on the podcast that I guess are
where are we going with
needing
this?
to be adapted slightly. Like I tell the same stories over and over and over again, or, you know, stuff like that, that it's good to get that kind of feedback. You give me some feedback sometimes. Kate gives me feedback sometimes. Like there are things that like I can do differently that I should do differently.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to hear that. It's also really helpful to know like where the audience is coming from, demographic traits, psychographic traits, whether they road run or trail run or whatnot.
If they have a dog or not, if they have kids or not.
Exactly.
Just like understanding their situation a little bit more.
Yeah, so that we can even like bring cool brands that are relevant to our audience. Like it was something like 50% or 40% of our audience has a dog.
Yeah.
So we reached out to a couple of dog brands and almost had something going, but budgets were a challenge. But yeah, stuff like that helps us, again, continue to put it on and get a little creative when it comes to brand sponsorship.
Yeah. I want to like just take a step back to the feedback piece and not taking like singular feedback from like, you know, random people on the internet and who like
but the
leave me in
podcast
comments.
Listeners are not random people.
They're not
on the
random
internet.
people, but we need a quorum of them. And I like this concept of like you have in your life your board of directors, like your people that you look to for actual advice. So like, you know, Kate obviously is on yours. Hopefully I am too, where you're like, actually, okay, I'm going to listen to this person. But then when we need to get like bigger feedback, like that's where we use a survey. So survey coming soon in a couple of weeks, mid-February. Keep an eye out for that because there will be some prizes associated with it.
And we really appreciate the people who take the time to fill out the survey. I think it was about 200 people last time.
Yeah.
And very much appreciate that.
It helps us inform like so much of what we do, and it's incredibly helpful. So thank you so much.
The other piece, while we're thanking people for doing things, so the discount codes are a two-way street, right? They give people a discount, but it also signals to the brand that, at least on the performance marketing side, that we're having an impact. So we appreciate when people use the discount codes. If it's a small business, DM them and let them know that you heard about the brand from the podcast, or if you see them at an event, it would be great if you could say something. That kind of stuff
totally
helps
or
a
like
ton.
If you used a product or you bought a product with our code or whatever because you heard it on the podcast, like shoot Jon a DM and let him know. Like that stuff is always good for us to know too, like what brands are resonating with our audience too. Like
and
that's
what's
helpful.
not resonating.
Yeah.
Like if I recommend something and it sucks, I should probably know.
I should probably know that.
I would hope it doesn't suck because I wouldn't be recommending
tested
it.
But maybe something works for you. Anyways. Okay. So that's a listener feedback. We love it, and keep an eye out for the survey. We're getting to the end here. It's pretty exciting stuff.
This might be a PR for episodes.
I know.
This
I'm
year.
like parched. I need to get some water.
It's a good thing we have these Go Brewing brews.
The Sunshine State Tropical IPA with mango and peach is a real treat.
So this is like in college, I would drink beer mosas. This is as close you can get to a beer mosa while actually tasting good.
And being non-alcoholic.
Yeah,
I don't drink, and so maybe my taste is skewed from the last time I did drink, but this is like the closest to like a nice juicy IPA that I feel like I actually
And I don't like IPAs generally, and I love this.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good team over there. I think that just got into Costco in the Midwest, which is
very cool. They did just get into
cool.
Costco in the Midwest. Congrats to Joe and Aaron and the team.
Yeah. Okay. Lastly, we just want to talk about like networking and how we think about that and how we're going to prioritize that moving forward. Like, what are your thoughts on networking? I hate that term too. It's like relationship building. Let's just call it that.
As we were talking about, I think there's a lot of benefit for podcasts working together, both to raise each other up and also apply leverage. So we've talked a lot about how do we work with like Fortune 500 brands, and a Fortune 500 brand is not going to be interested in a podcast like this that has a few thousand downloads. But if you can
per episode,
yeah, about 1.7 million overall. But if you can aggregate, 5 or 6 and make it 50,000 a week or something like that, that's interesting to them. And I'm really obsessed with like bringing more money into the sport and helping more creators do this and get paid. And so that's been a goal of like, again, bringing creative partnerships into the space, not just like, anyway. I also really enjoy going on other podcasts, so I think that will continue to be a part of it. And having other podcasters on this podcast, both as a way to grow, but it's really fun when you have two conversationalists conversing.
Awesome.
And people sometimes apologize for being like wordy or long-winded on podcasts. I'm like, no, that's like the epitome of it. You should be wordy and long-winded.
Yeah.
So I find that those conversations, I'm thinking Joe Corcione.
Yeah, Joe, my coach, my running coach.
Shout out to Joe.
Everyday Ultra.
Jason.
Yeah.
Zoe.
You and Jason have a great banter too, which I think is fun.
Well, I'm faster than him now, which is really fun.
Hear that? Oh gosh, I don't want to be in the middle of this. Moving on.
Zoe and Kylie, it's really fun to have conversation.
Claire Shorenstein.
Eat for Endurance.
Okay, last bit I think is you run with it.
Take the mic.
Finally take the mic. You've been not talking at all this entire time.
So I can't believe this will be episode, I don't know, 360.
Yeah.
I've done one a week since February of 2019. I have a lot of people who have helped make that possible. For the first couple of years, it was just me. And then Ruby and Brian joined the team. Ruby helped with show notes and guest facilitation and as a hype person as well. If anyone knows Ruby, you know that she's a big hype person. And then Brian started around episode 150, which this was a huge change and took the editing off of my hands. I think we started working together, 50 episodes later. No, 30 episodes later, because that was March of 2021. And we started in January of 2022. You brought Angie into the mix. Brian continued. We had Eric working video. Now Dylan's doing video. Dylan's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I can't do this without a team. Tony DePasquale, Tony with the Sony, built the website.
What a mensch.
He continues to edit the website. My buddy Ross Yellen, former roommate, has provided a lot of advisory guidance and is going to help with a rebrand of the website. Kate, I can't say enough awesome stuff about Kate. Anyone who knows her knows exactly why. She's amazing. She's either in the sauna right now or she can hear this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one it is. But I very much appreciate and love Kate very much.
We love Kate.
We love Kate. Everyone who knows Kate loves Kate. Kate's blushing if she's listening to this. And brands. But before I get into the brands, I am so grateful that people like you are listening to this.
Not me, Emily.
Well, hopefully you're listening. You just showed you're listening. Yeah. It still surprises me how many people listen to this and listen to it on a week in and week out basis. It still surprises me every time somebody tells me they're listening to the podcast. It still surprises me when I meet someone who I don't actually know and they're like, I've been listening to your podcast for years. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I initially did this because I thought it would create some value and I thought it would be interesting. It was interesting to me. And it's so humbling that this podcast has been listened to this many times. Yeah. I'm just so grateful that I get to do this. I'm grateful for my team at Insight Tracker that empowers me to do this. I'm grateful that it doesn't take up a huge amount of my time so that I can do this. And that is in part due to brand partners, due to the number of listeners, and due to our savvy work with brands and all of you. Okay, moving on from the gratitude from that side of things, I want to call out the brand partners. Again, they're the ones who help make this possible. In 2024, we worked with Puma, Boulderthon, Fuel Goods, Tifosi, Go Brewing, Scratch, 2Before, Emic Volkswagen, Emic Kia, Chair Bundy, Hydropack, Made Good, Hyperice, Fubo TV, and Wazelle. That's a lot of brands that have trusted us to represent them and trusted me to represent them. And I'm super grateful for all of them, and all their products are fantastic. In 2025, we're going deeper and we're going to be more focused with less brands so that we can do more with the brands that we work with. Puma, Tifosi, Boulderthon, Fuel Goods, and a couple others to be named later.
Yeah, TBD.
TBD. And thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
What a hard ending.
Yeah, there's a lot of names. Yeah, we got through it though. Yeah, and 2025 is going to be great. We're going to keep bringing you guys content and making it awesome and creating a better community for runners.
I think I'm going to go back to not preparing for podcasts again.
Yeah, was it stressful to have the outline?
This was stressful.
Yeah. I mean, you created it. So just to be clear, Jem and I created it, actually.
It was a co-creation with our AI overlords.
Yeah, we hope this was helpful for you and it gives you a glimpse into the behind the scenes that happen all day, every day for us. And we can't wait to see what 2025 brings.
And a shout out to Emily and Angie of Wild Poppy. Shout out to you guys. You two make it possible. You're wonderful. It's been super great working with you. If you're a podcaster looking to take things to the next level, reach out to Emily and Angie and ask them how they can help you in 2025.
And let's go. Hell yeah, brother.